For this lesson, we are going to talk about the rhetorical triangle and rhetorical appeals. This will be split up over a couple of different videos and activities, so make sure you watch each one closely. So first and foremost, what is rhetoric? Rhetoric is the art or study of using language effectively and persuasively. Aristotle says that rhetoric is the ability to see or identify in any given circumstance the means of persuasion. Ultimately, it's an attempt to understand how and why the thing someone says or does affects others. So, when we're talking about rhetoric, we're really looking at how someone who is speaking or writing is using their language to make us want to do something or feel a certain way. How is it that we are being persuaded by the words that are being used? When discussing rhetoric, Aristotle discuss the idea of the rhetorical triangle, which is composed of three basic elements that are present in every rhetorical situation: a speaker, audience, and subject. And it's important to understand that these three items are intertwined. You must have all three for a rhetorical situation. So the speaker is the person that is speaking or potentially writing. The subject is what they are speaking or writing about, and the audience is who the piece of work is actually for, who is intended to hear the message that is being presented. So, when we think about the speaker, the reader must determine the speaker of a text. In some cases, the speaker may simply be the writer, but in many cases, it's a persona assumed by the reader. So it's a role the writer is a role that the writer is taking on. So, for example, in Homeless by Anna Quindlen, the speaker is Anna Quindlen, but she's also taking on the role as an advocate for homeless people. You see, because when we're reading that essay, we understand that Anna Quindlen's not simply just trying to inform us about the homeless problem within America. She's wanting her readers, particularly the readers of Newsweek, where the essay was published, she's wanting those folks to do something about it. She's wanting people to understand that homeless people are not simply just some issue or problem, but they're people who are humans who need help, and that we, the reader in that case, should take action to help the problem. In your writing, you should evaluate the role you wish to take on to present your ideas. In lots of cases, it's simply going to be, I'm a college student and I'm writing this paper, but it could be that you are taking on a specific role. If you're being asked to give a speech in your speech class about a drug addiction, and you are strongly against drug addiction because you've been personally impacted by drug use, then the role you're going to take on is as someone who is against drug use because you've seen the harmful effects of addiction. So really understanding what role you're taking is really important. The topic is simply the topic that the speaker is discussing or presenting. It's the content or message. This is the really easy part typically for us all to understand. The subject is as simple as it sounds like it is. It's simply what the speech or the essay is about. And then there's the audience, which is the group experiencing a work of writing or a speech. If you are looking at an essay, it's going to be who we consider the reader. If it's a speech, we're thinking of the audience. Typically, there is a specific audience for whatever it is that you're reading or the speech you may be hearing. Sometimes it's a general reader. So if something is published, for example, in Cosmopolitan magazine, then we understand that the audience there is probably going to be young women who are concerned about beauty and makeup and that sort of stuff, right? However, if we are looking at Field and Stream magazine, we understand that that's going to be probably a male demographic that they're catering to, who's into outdoorsy things, right? If we're watching something on Fox News, we know that what's there is meant for a conservative, political group probably who support the current president. If we're watching CNN, we're probably looking at a more liberal audience who likely does not support our current president. So understanding who the intended audience is helps us to better understand the writer's intentions. An audience, however, can be a general reader. It could just be that this is meant for anybody. If something is in the local newspaper, it's probably meant for just about anybody, right? If it's a commercial on TV, the audience is meant for lots of times general folks, but not always, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. The audience could be a group of academics. If a piece is published in an academic journal, then it's probably meant for people who are in academia. It could be that something is meant for professionals. If you are reading a piece that's in Business Insider, then it's probably going to be people who are professionals in the business world, right? If you're reading Architecture Today, we're reading a magazine for architects. So understanding who a piece is made for is really a key component of understanding work. However, sometimes when we're the writers of essays, we forget about the audience. And this is a real danger because audience awareness is the key to effective writing. While your perspective as the writer is important because you feel the way you feel or you think the way you think, it doesn't matter how you feel or think if you're not taking into consideration who your audience is. If you're not being mindful of who you're writing to or for, you're going to overlook what their biases might be, what their positions are, what their objections will be. And when you've overlooked those details, you've lost your audience. And your writing cannot be effective if you don't know your audience. So it's super important that we know who our audience is and that we are operating in that, with that in mind. So you're going to practice next, and it's going to come in an activity where you're going to watch a commercial and answer some questions, and I'll see you on the other side.